and welcome back to Downtime Activities. Matthew here with another help action for you guys. The help action being our video series where we break down some 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons rules. And this one, in honor of it being our 10th help action, is Help Actionception. A help action about help actions. This seems like a very kind of cut and dry, this is what the help action does, move on sort of topic, but there's actually a lot more minutia that goes into the help action and lots of confusion and questions that I think happen all the time in play with its use, as well as limitations that some DMs feel the need to put on it. So I wanted to break down here how the help action works in and out of combat and the distinction there, as well as some frequently asked questions and how I think you can or shouldn't limit it in play to make it work well in your game. So let's check it out.
Alright, let's talk about the help action. First of all, a brief side note here, I'm going to talk about the Mastermind Rogue. It's the only class, at least that I could think of, that really messes with and changes the rules of the help action. So just to clarify, with the Mastermind Rogue, it's going to change things up by basically following all the same rules, except allowing the character to take the help action as a bonus action instead of using a regular action for it. And also they can take the help action at a range of 30 feet, but only to assist in attacks. And this is an important thing to remember if you're playing a Mastermind Rogue. You can't use the other aspects of the help action from that 30-foot range, only to assist in attacks and give advantage on attacks. Now let's talk help action. Specifically, let's start by talking about the difference between the help action and the working together section of the player's handbook. These often get overlapped or some parts overlooked, and there's often confusion over which applies to what. There's a lot of DMs out there who say that the help action can't be used out of combat because it's in the actions that can be taken in combat rules section, and this is where working together comes in. Let's start with the help action. The help action rules can be found in the player's handbook on page 192. It is an action taken in combat, meaning that you use this on your turn as an action. There are two main ways you can use this to assist people. One is with ability checks, and that will allow them, when you take that help action, to gain advantage on the next ability check they make to perform the task that you are assisting with. This is provided that they make the check before the start of your next turn. Otherwise, you'd have to take a new help action on that turn. The other way this can be used is on attacks. You can grant your ally advantage on their attack by taking the help action. There are some rules to this as well. You have to be within 5 feet of the target of the attack when you make the help action. Also, similarly to assisting with ability checks, the attack has to happen before your next turn to gain that advantage. That is using the help action in combat. If you're assisting somebody outside of combat, that is actually covered under the header Working Together and is in a different section of the player's handbook. The Working Together section can be found on page 175 of the player's handbook. And this only covers ability checks because you probably won't be making an attack roll that somebody could help with outside of combat. I know there's some people out there that say, but what if I'm making an attack to break down a door or break another object? Or things along those lines, but the help action really doesn't apply here, as it's meant to show your character distracting or feinting to give the other character an opening, and as much as you might be a distracting character, I don't think you'll be able to distract a door and make it easier for your barbarian to smash it down. So, for using these working together roles on ability checks, the character who's leading the effort, or the one with the highest ability modifier for whatever the skill check or ability check you're trying to do is, can make that ability check with advantage if the other person helps them. There are limitations here, however. The way it's written in the book, at the very least, says that you can only help if it's a task that each individual could attempt alone. For instance, you can't pick a lock without Thieves' Tool's proficiency, so you'd both have to have that. And you can only help if 2 or more characters working together on the task would actually be helpful. They use the example of threading a needle, and this is a fairly good one. If you have multiple people helping on certain tasks, they'd probably get in the way instead of actually helping. That's where these two things kind of differentiate, the working together and the help action. Working together has a little more specifics on the limitations, and the help action is specifically in combat. Next, I'd like to go over some frequently asked questions that come up in relation to the help action. The first of these are, if I take the help action to assist in an attack, do I get to choose who I give advantage to? And the answer here is technically no. Jeremy Crawford has said that if you use the attack aiding option in the help action, the next ally who attacks the target will get the benefit. This doesn't really matter though, however. This issue can kind of be totally avoided by the answer of our next question. And that question is, can you hold the help action? And the answer here is yes. You can hold a readied action to assist a certain character on that character's turn. This does require you to still be within 5 feet of the enemy, so that can be kind of a drawback of doing this. But if the person you're wanting to give advantage to isn't the next person who's going to make an attack, you could stay within 5 feet of the enemy and hold your action to use the help action and assist when that person is going to be making their attack. Another frequently asked question, do you have to stay within 5 feet of the enemy, or can you move after taking the help action? Yes, you can move. You just have to be within 5 feet when you take the help action. That effect will still be on them even if you move away after doing so, though attacks of opportunity and whatnot will still come into play here. Does the help action break invisibility? Usually no, it does not. Most invisibility effects state that they are broken if the player attacks or casts a spell. The help action is not the attack action, and it's certainly not casting a spell. Side note here, invisible help actions are an awesome way to use invisibility in combat. If you're a wizard and you only got a couple of your spell slots left or don't want to burn them on a particular combat, if you just cast invisibility on yourself and make sure that your biggest hitting melee combatant is getting advantage on all their attacks by using the help action, this can be a super fun and useful use of the spell. Anyway, a couple more questions here. Last two. Can familiars take the help action? Yes, they can. The spell says that familiars can't attack, but it can take other actions as normal. This includes the help action. And this is a very potent use of familiars, specifically if you have something like an owl with the flyby ability, granting you advantage on your attacks. This is a very useful thing in combat. And lastly, can you use the help action on yourself? No. It's that simple, no. There's no real way that would make sense. You can't distract somebody and then be the person that attacks them and give yourself that advantage. Just doesn't work that way. Now for a little advice on using the help action in your game as both a game master and a player to get the most from it and not have people leave with hurt feelings. As far as limitations on the help action, the limitation that you can only help in situations where a helper would actually be useful is a for sure yes all the time. It doesn't explicitly say this for the help action, only in the working together section, but this should just be a blanket thing that covers both. There's situations in combat where characters are going to be making ability checks that someone helping it wouldn't make sense for that, so don't just go with rules as written and say that they can, because it just doesn't make sense. The other limiting factor that they use with the working together section is that they can only help if they have kind of the relevant proficiency, if they would be able to attempt it on their own. And while I would use this typically, I would be fairly lenient, or at least give characters a chance to explain exactly how they're helping, because at the DM's discretion, for both the help action and out of combat working together, some tasks don't really need knowledgeable or proficient help in order to be helpful. Sometimes an untrained but different opinion can help come to a correct solution, and sometimes just an extra set of hands is enough to get a task done, even if that's not a task those hands are typically doing or practiced at. So make it make sense, make it logical. If you're a player, make sure that you trust in your DM and listen to them and what they say. And as a GM, if you feel that your players are abusing the help action, then you may need to be a little more strict on when and how they can use it. And just make sure that you're using those kind of logic before rules kind of mindset to help avoid them abusing this as a rule. In this vein, earlier I talked about using familiars as a really potent way to get a lot out of the help action because you're not taking an action away from a character. If you have players using this constantly and having an advantage on all of their attacks, remember that familiars can be targeted by attacks, and if players are using this all the time, they're putting their familiars out there, and it's very easy for even a bandit to bop that toad or whatever it is, snake, and take it out. Even with that owl flyby tactic, you can always have the archer shoot the owl out of the sky, and while I don't like the idea of constantly killing your player's familiar, if they're constantly using it in combat to take the help action, that's totally on the table. Lastly, a really good way to not necessarily limit how often they're using the help action, but make sure that your players are actually thinking and using the help action logically, is to ask your players to describe how specifically they are helping with a task. This both makes sure that the help is actually helpful and logical, and also can be a cool moment for the character to roleplay and describe their character's actions in helping their fellow players in whatever task they're doing. As a player, if you don't use the help action very often, start using it more. It's super useful, and it can come up more often than you think. Don't abuse it though, or you'll probably irritate your DM, and you'll probably make it this kind of uncomfortable thing where you're arguing back and forth about when you can or can't use it. Make your help actions make sense, and be ready to explain how you are helping whenever you use it.
That has been our breakdown of the help action. I hope this has cleared up some confusion for you guys out there. I hope this has been a help action for you. Sorry, cheesy, terrible. Hope you enjoyed it. If this was helpful, please give the video a like. If you have any other ways that you like to limit or use the help action, please throw that down in the comments below. We really appreciate any interaction on the channel. Now go forth, slay dragons, sling spells, roll dice, and enjoy your downtime activities.